Danke. Danke.
In this choir loft, Bach worked for 27 years. The St. Thomas Church also served for rehearsals and performances of more elaborate orchestral pieces. Bach's friend, Matthias Gessner, described him in action as a performer and conductor.
If you could see Bach playing the harpsichord with all the fingers of both hands, or running over the keys of the organ with both hands, and at the utmost speed with his feet, if you could see him singing with one voice and playing his own part, but watching over everything, even 30 or 40 musicians, giving the right note to one from the top of his voice to another from the bottom, all alone, right in the middle of the din, holding everyone together, full of rhythm in every part of his body. The accomplishments of our Bach achieve what not many Orpheuses could.
Over my left shoulder is the St. Thomas Church, where Bach did a great deal of his writing of the sacred cantatas. And right across the street over my right shoulder is a simple coffee house where he would have often gone to relax at the end of a hard day of work. We often see Bach here in the church, not over here in the coffee house. But for him, these two worlds were not diametrically opposite. This was not the sacred world and this the secular world. For him, all of God's world was sacred. And he wanted to impart that to his listeners, whether he was writing a very serious piece of music or whether he was writing something that took things much less seriously. I always enjoy so much listening to the coffee cantata. It shows Bach in a much more light-hearted vein. Unfortunately, most people think of Bach as a writer of very serious, very heavy music. And that's mostly our own fault. We as performers are so overawed by the vast intellect of this man, his sense of form and construction, his enormous mastery of his craft, that we are in awe as we play his music. We project our own sincerity instead of projecting the diverse characters of Bach's music. We're also not always as aware as we should be that even in his most serious music, he was dealing with forms which originated in the old dance music that he had inherited from many centuries before. One of the places in Leipzig where his secular music was performed is the Bose House. Bach knew the prosperous Bose family well and enjoyed making music in their home. Today, it houses the Bach Archives and Museum. In this corner of the museum, you have etchings devoted to the great contemporaries of Bach. And in the very center, the four greatest contemporaries of Bach, all of them but one older than he. The one who was born in the same year, 1685, is the one on top, George Frederick Handel. And even though he was born in Germany, in Halle, he really represents England because he lived most of his life in London, where he wrote many operas and many oratorios. The other German in this display is Telemann, for whom Bach himself had a great deal of respect. In some ways, they competed with each other in Germany throughout their lives, even though Telemann was the more resonant figure at that time. François Couperin, the great musician from France, and you have Antonio Vivaldi, the greatest composer of that time, from Italy. It's interesting how Bach assimilated the styles of these two men, even though he never traveled outside of his own country. With Couperin, whom he first heard of in Celle, and with Vivaldi, whom he first came to know quite well during his time in Weimar, he actually copied out much of their music onto manuscript paper. This was the way a man of that time assimilated a style, came to understand it deeply.
Bach himself was basically self-taught. I mean, he picked up things from his models, father, brother, uncle, and so forth, but he was basically learning how to compose from studying other masters' music. And if you look at the French models or the Italian models he very carefully studied, he transformed them into a language that was neither truly French nor truly Italian. He combined the two styles in what the Germans at the time called the mixed style, and then in addition gave it his own personal stamp.